Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Do you ever get to the end of a movie where the hero had to make a difficult choice, and all you want to do is talk to people about whether they made the right one?
Watch an episode of Star Trek and spend the next few days thinking about the rights of synthetic beings like Data and the Doctor. I became a co-host of the Superhero Ethics podcast because I love those questions, and the people at Wendy's are tired of hearing me talk about them.
We're not a review podcast. We're more interested in questions the characters face and how different works approach similar questions. Sometimes we'll even go behind the camera, talking about how on-screen media gets made and how that affects what questions get asked, which ones don't, and who gets to ask them.
We hit a wide range of media: movies, TV shows, books, and video games.
You can find us under Superhero Ethics wherever you listen to podcasts or go to theethicalpanda.com. But you can also do far more. We love listener feedback and we'll happily talk about your questions or comments on air, and members get special bonus content.
Hashtag not sponsored by Wendy's.
Well, howdy folks, my name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of The Exorcist Minute, a show where we examine, extrapolate, and excavate the scariest movie of all time.
Each episode covers a single minute of William Friedkin's 1973 horror masterpiece, The Exorcist.
If you like deep dives, this show is the deepest.
Did you know the film's iconic theme song, Tubular Bells, wasn't written specifically for the movie?
Or that the 1973 audience members were throwing up and fainting in the theater before they ever got a glimpse of the demon?
What about all the crazy on-set mishaps, cast injuries, the director firing real guns?
Ooh. Ever wonder where Ouija boards came from or how they got their name? How about some history on the Catholic Church or the Roman rite of exorcism? Or maybe we can tempt you with some juicy demonology lore. Did you know that Pazuzu had an ex-wife? Find The Exorcist Minute on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows, or at theexorcistminute.com. Until next time, folks,
the power of The Exorcist compels you.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
The League of Gentlemen is over. If you insist on this socialistic nonsense, yes, you're losing a friend, but gaining a second in command.
They were all ex-army officers, but beyond that, they had only two things in common: a guilty past and a hopeless future. They had nothing to lose by joining the League of Gentlemen. Their leader had a plan which staggered their imaginations and sounded in each one of them a call to high adventure.
Think of it as a full-scale military operation. What chance has a bunch of ordinary civilians got against a trained, armed, and disciplined military unit? You were a soldier, man. You ought to know.
Andy, one, I made a huge mistake watching this and a double feature with our next movie, After the Fox. I love them so much. And I called you out on Blue Sky saying you should rank them before you'd seen them. And that was a mistake because you answered like an ass. 5, 5, 5 all around. And I kind of think we might be in for a real trio of outstanding movies.
I'm curious. I'm definitely curious because I have yet to see After the Fox, nor have I seen the final film of this return to the Heist Film series, Grand Slam. But yeah, this was my pick. I wanted to go back to Heist Films, and so here we are kicking off with this. And unintentionally, they all ended up in the 60s. So here we are with 1960s, The League of Gentlemen, directed by Basil Dearden, based on John Boland's 1958 novel.
Okay. So what did you think? This was your pick? Is this a welcome return to our Heist films?
I had a lot of fun with this. This is definitely in the style of the heist film where you start where you need to build the team and you find all the different people and you kind of, we as the audience get set up with a little backstory of who each of these people are, what's going on in their lives. And then we see the team get built, and then we see them start all the planning and processing and then going through with it and how it all goes. And I thought it played really well. I enjoyed the characters. If I have a complaint, it's that for a team of, I think it ended up being 8 people, I wanted to feel like I knew more of them a little better. You know, I don't feel like, and that was also one of my issues with Ocean's 11. Like, they have 11 it's in the title. You have to have 11 actors to play all those different roles. You're going to have some that kind of get neglected and given the short shrift when it comes to character development. I mean, same thing with the X-Men, same thing with any of these movies where you have a ton of characters. I think, 5 or 6 is probably the most you're really going to get to know. And I think they do a pretty good job with the team here. I wanted to know a little bit more, or just have a little more story with a few of them. Because like once things start, we kind of lose that.
Yeah, we lose it. But I guess I didn't come at it feeling like there was a hole here, because I think I come into it thinking there are a lot of guys. Like there's no way they're going to be able to do what I would normally do, because it's not like a limited series. Like I actually could see The League of Gentlemen becoming a limited series. That would be a fun way to reboot this thing, because you're right, there are so many interesting characters. I didn't find there was a hole in the story that we got here. I thought it was really fun, and the people that I was most interested in, Jack Hawkins, Nigel Patrick, Attenborough, amazing. Like I got enough of their playfulness on screen that I found I didn't want for much. But your point is well taken. There are a lot of guys, and this is a movie that didn't need all those guys.
Right. This wasn't, well, even when he was going through, I'm like, oh, are we going to get to the part where it's like a breakdown of like, well, you're the explosives expert, you're the driver, like where we were going to get a definition of who they all were. And we hit a point where it's just like, and those 3 are just good soldiers. It'll be just great. To have those extra hands. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's a quick way to
those are, isn't it? I know it's black and white, but they're wearing red shirts.
Exactly. And so that was kind of funny, and also even to the point where, and it's also, I suppose, in a way where with this type of story, this was pretty early. I mean, this is the same year as the original Ocean's 11, and so that film,
which was terrible,
absolutely terrible. Although interestingly, also weren't they paratroopers? So it was another thing where it was former military men. Yeah, but there was this sense of like, once things got going, like we don't see each of them prepping their own particular part. Like we don't see the explosives expert very specifically working on just the explosives to get that part of the story ready. It's like once they're doing stuff, it's just kind of like a blanket of just like getting things ready. Or
the car guy, like he steals a car. I think I'd like to see how he works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
all we get is the argument after he steals it because he did it at the wrong time of day.
Yes, right. Which was great. And did they ever resolve the opening? Maybe because there are some of these guys that when you put them in a suit, they look kind of the same. So forgive me on this. But the opening of this movie, he comes out of a manhole cover in the street and then goes and steals a
tux, right?
In a tux, yeah. Who was that? Which guy was that?
That was Hyde. That was our Jack Hawkins.
That was Jack Hawkins.
The lead character.
And he stole that car.
Well, we don't know if he stole it, but he hops into the Rolls Royce and drives it off. But I thought that was his Rolls Royce, because isn't that the same one that gets him into trouble at the end?
Oh, okay. I could not figure out how that sort of prologue made sense in the movie. Like, where was I supposed to have that fit? Why was he in the sewer?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I had that same question, and I was like, why do we start the film there? Other than it's cool to see the film start with a guy poking his head out of a manhole cover, and then he gets out of it. It is
cool.
And he's dressed like James Bond. He's in his whole dinner jacket and everything, like prepped for the nines. And you're like, why is this guy in a sewer like that? My sense, and I didn't compare it with the location later in the film when we're actually at the bank robbery, but my sense is it was all part of his reconnaissance, trying to figure out all the details for his plan. Like, I know there is that point where the explosives expert has to drop bombs down two particular, they're not really manhole covers, I don't know, just like vents or something, but he has to drop those down to destroy the electric works so that the alarms don't trigger anything. My sense was that he was down there just to figure out where that sort of stuff was, like the final little pieces of his puzzle.
Okay.
But to your point, it's vague. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I did like it, although I have to admit the distraction of watching the street cleaner go by and shovel water straight down in there, got me thinking about how watertight are those manhole covers, because he's in this tux right below the manhole cover, and he came up nary a splash upon it.
I was wondering that too, because inevitably I guess I don't know if they actually have holes or not. They have whatever you call those little
anchor,
grooves.
the hook thing.
Yeah, the grooves that you can stick that in. But I don't know if those go all the way through or if it's just a surface level groove.
But even so, like, do you think just the weight of the manhole cover is watertight? There's a hole. No, I think it goes straight through. There's a hole. Water goes. Andy, we need to test this.
Let's go find some manhole covers in our hood, and
you get in the manhole cover, and I'm just going to start.
So you just hose it down.
I'm just going to hose it down. Yeah. So I thought it was a great entrance. Thin on the explanation. I could have used a little bit more, but mostly the rest of the sort of provocative invitation, putting half of the bills in the book with the letter and sending it to these guys, basically saying, here's a great heist book. We should do this for real.
Right.
Is an awesome premise.
I loved it. Apparently in the book, it's actually the book that he refers to is, I can't remember what it's called, Clean Check, I think. And it's the original book that Stanley Kubrick's film was based on, The Killing. And so I thought that was interesting that particular film, which we've talked about on the show, or we haven't talked about the book, but the film version of it, I'm assuming the book is comparable, where they go and rob the track. And that was the robbery that they wanted to see, like, copy and play out. So I think it's interesting that here, basically they decided we are just going to make one up. And so this book that they are looking at, The Golden Fleece, is actually, while there is a book out there called The Golden Fleece, it is not the same book. This is a fictional book made just for this. And I was trying to find, did they change that because they were trying to convince people not to go actually try doing this robbery? Like, we'll just make a fake one.
Right. That's smart. That's smart. It's the equivalent of 5551212.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so you bought the premise, like you were into the premise.
Well, and I think what's interesting about the premise, and we should just talk a little bit about this, especially because for our pre-show chat, for our members, we talked a little bit about the idea of post-war soldiers and what they end up doing. And, we talked about things as diverse as Coming Home and Rambo. So this is definitely one where we have this character, Lieutenant Colonel Norman Hyde, who kind of was older, and it sounded like they just forced him into retirement and put him in this place where he was left like, well, what do I do now, sort of thing, and unsure of where his life was going to go. And as we kind of meet all of these other players, they all have one reason or another to be frustrated with how things left with the military. And I thought that was actually a really interesting setup, that we actually get this idea of military men who are frustrated with being put in a place where they've learned all these skills that now they can't apply anywhere. So they decide, hey, I have an idea. Let's apply these skills to pulling off a robbery, and we'll succeed because we're going to do it like we would in the military.
Right.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's the disillusionment and the sort of motivated by the intrinsic sense of betrayal, that they were taught to do things that don't actually have a whole lot of rational application in everyday society. And we've talked about what was the Ronald Reagan movie that we watched that was similar. It was like,
where's the rest of me?
Where's the rest of me? But it was the interview where he went in to interview to manage the store, right? Not Reagan, the other guy.
Oh, you're talking about not the Ronald Reagan movie. You're talking about The Best Years of Our Lives.
Oh, that was the one. Yeah, The Best Years of Our Lives, where he goes in to have that interview and he says, I don't like. I was taught to do things that I can't get hired to do outside of the military. That's kind of the same thing that these guys are talking about. Like we were cast aside only because you made us specialists in things that there's no specialty for, or a very limited specialty for outside of the play. And as a result, their prospects continue to dwindle in the real world. They're running out of money. They're running out of relationships. And yet, because of the experience they had together, right? The shared experience and grievance with their experience in the war, they have a certain organization and camaraderie that is irreplaceable, and that the only thing they can figure out to do with it is a gentleman's crime. And it's good.
Now, to be fair, I mean, we should just mention, it's not like they were great soldiers, every one of them. Like, there were problems with some of these soldiers. Like, and now, like, even now, like Attenborough's character, he might be working as a mechanic, but he's doing criminal activity on the side. Like, he's helping we see him helping this guy set up what was it? It was like a gambling, it was like a slot machine, right?
Right. He was tuning slot machines to change the odds of their payout. And was that his dad?
I thought it was just some guy who came over. I don't know if it was his dad, but
I thought it was his dad, but I get confused because they call each other old darling, old boy,
old dear, yeah.
Old dear. Like, I not that I've ever called my dad old darling, but like there are just terms of affinity that I didn't understand what they always meant.
Yeah. That's an interesting element with these people, because we've got like the padre, the guy who I'm assuming he's only ever posing as a priest, who actually has this huge porn collection, and he has
that was outstanding, right?
Yeah,
like that was maybe the biggest surprise of the movie.
Like, those people come to talk with him, the police, and so he skips out, and we're finding out that all of these people, it's not like Dana Andrews in The Best Years of Our Lives, where they just don't fit into society anymore. It's like they potentially could have, but they're also kind of unsavory in some aspect or another, you know?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not all of them. Some of them also just are in bad marriages. Like, we've got one guy whose wife is definitely a little more in control of their relationship and is sleeping around. And he, like, when he comes into the bathroom when she's in the bubble bath and has that conversation with her, it's clear that he just has no capacity for how to actually handle a woman who is as forceful as she is. And he does whatever she wants and can't get any of his own decisions made. And that was like made for a really interesting relationship. And so we see how all of these people, like, I liked the setup of all of our characters as we walk through each of them and get to know who they all are and why they all are where they are in their lives, and why they agree to this meeting when they get this mysterious letter from Hyde to go to this club and sit down for this meeting to see what opportunity he might have.
And that meeting is I guess you all are wondering why we've gathered here today, why I've called you together today meeting. And I love this meeting so much because Hyde is sitting at the front and says, I assume you've all read the book. And the first one is Race, I think, who says, no, I don't read anything from Unknown Gentleman or something like that. And I thought that was great. And then he asked them if they have a shared enthusiasm about his level of fandom of this book, and nobody does.
I know.
They're not into it at all. And I thought that was a fantastic bit of humor in this thing. Like, it was just wonderful. Like, really, you don't get it? You don't get it? This is so great. Like, how many times have I had that conversation with a group of people who don't understand why I love something? Well,
that's what's really funny is the way that plays, because I think that he is somebody who has this vision, but also, and it's funny because also as we learn about each of the men, he does militarily actually outrank all of them. So he's the highest rank in the room, but obviously that doesn't really matter so much at this point because they're just all civilians.
But man, once they buy in,
it does. But at this point, they don't really know that. And they're just like, whatever, this sounds like dumb. Like, yeah, so it's a book about a robbery, but why do I care? And that was a really fun bit, trying to then figure out how to get all of these guys convinced. And that's where he kind of walks through each of them and why all of whatever issues they had led to them getting kicked out of the military or whatever the case may be, and kind of reveals that there is an opportunity here for you and you should pay attention. And that's what I thought. The way that conversation spun, I liked. I also like that he ends where he's like, well, I got to go, but hey, I've got the room for 4 hours, so enjoy the meal.
Yeah, there is something about those two. There are two other elements, and we talked about one, which is once they bought in, how quickly they fell into the atmosphere of military precision and calling each other sir, and even when Attenborough goes out with his girlfriend and sneaks in, takes his shoes off and sneaks in, and he's caught, he is still in military character. Right. I'm sorry, sir. Yes, sir. I'll take the penalty. But he's still polite in that sort of style. I thought that was really great. I really liked the way they were in the civilian trappings and behaved militaristically. I also, in terms of bringing them together, the way the film normalizes their distinctly different experiences of last resort and brings them together to commit a crime as their last resort, I thought was really interesting, because it turns these guys in suits into, right? I mean, they're respectable people, and they look respectable, and they're going to commit a crime, rather extensive financial crime, theft of a lot of gold. And I thought that was a neat twist to say, like, even though these guys look the part of sophisticated gentlemen, they really aren't, right? They've been driven to something else.
Well, and I think that the title of the film plays on that anyway. Yeah. Like, we're getting from the jump kind of a nod to the fact that this is a group of British gentlemen who have come together for this purpose. It is kind of a league. It sounds like some syndicate, right? Like that we've got here, like some crime syndicate. Side note, to the point where I think Alan Moore, there's nothing really about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen that connects to this, other than my understanding is that he liked this title and so used that as a starting place for that title.
What if they were gentlemen, but they were also extraordinary?
All right. This is the League of just ordinary gentlemen.
Yeah, League of Ordinary Gentlemen.
But no, I think that there's something interesting in the title, because it does play on the fact that these are former British soldiers. They should, and they're gentlemen. They're all upper crusts. They appear upper crust, we should just say. But the fact that they all decide, you know what, let's cross the line and become thieves. It is a really interesting place for all of these people to go to. And I think the title alone is kind of playing with that concept.
Yeah. So the film plays out. You get all the trappings of a heist film. You get the assembling the material. You get a lot of training. You get montage material of, hey, what happens? How do we create so much smoke? And
boy, do they!
They do. They have the smoke, and we get the actual sort of commitment to the crime. What did you think of the heist itself?
It's a fascinating heist. I thought that it played well. I want to talk about the previous heist also, when they're stealing from the military base to get all their stuff. But I think for the main heist, one, it just looks cool. The fact that they go all in with these smoke pods, I don't know what you'd call them, but these tanks that they use to kind of smoke up blocks of city, like blocks. It is literally blocks of the city. And they all are running around in gas masks. Like, it has a fantastic look. You put that in and it just creates this vibe that I don't feel like I've actually seen. Like, I feel like not enough heists in films, at least, use the idea of smoking up a place as a distraction. Like, it was really effective. I just thought that was great. The heist itself is planned and quick, and to that end, it's kind of in and out. It's nothing like creative or playful like you get in something like the Thomas Crown Affair or anything like that. It's just like they go in with guns, the guys are there with the cart, they throw their stuff off their cart onto their own, roll it out and throw it into their car, and that's kind of it. It's like very quick, and it's like it just also shows how efficient they were in the planning of it. But I liked the way that it played so efficiently. Like, for a film that is all about the heist, while it's not necessarily like incredibly elaborate, it was one that I bought into. Like, the way that they played it, I was like, I could see something like this getting pulled off, you know?
Yeah, totally. I want to just amplify the look. The gas masks coupled with the smoke, especially in black and white, I think is extraordinary. Like, there are some shots, individual shots in here that are truly breathtaking for a movie that's ostensibly a comedy heist. Like, the look here can be, you put a Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross soundtrack behind it, and you've got a damn near threatening experience.
Yeah.
They did put a car in a car. We have the British nesting cars. And I always like it when you put a car in a truck. That's fun. And that'll come back and play again for us later, I'm excited to say. And so I thought in general, the heist itself was great. It leads us to the ultimate unraveling of the story, which I thought in terms of the film was elegantly architected. That they get away with it and they go home to have a party, and one by one the guys take their share in their briefcase and leave the party until we're down to just a few guys, including Bunny, the guest, who knows nothing about this but gets arrested anyway. Is fantastic. And they end up not succeeding. They end up caught. All of these guys could not get away with what looked to be the perfect heist, all because a child wrote down a license plate. What did you think of the unraveling? Did it play for you as a comic twist at the end, or did it feel unrequited? Who were you rooting for?
I mean, I was rooting for our team because I did enjoy these characters. Kind of like the Ocean's films, you kind of just enjoy them. The difference with the Ocean's films is we know who they're robbing from, and so we have a little more sense of, I'd rather see them win in the end. But this film, it's just kind of like, the bank, they're just robbing from the general public. And so I guess I don't think I felt cheated either way. I think I would have been happy either way if they had gotten away with it or if they ended up getting caught. I think it was actually kind of a funny little way for them to get caught. And I think it spoke to the difference in attention to detail when you're thinking like militarily, and the things that might slip when you aren't necessarily paying attention to the military aspects. Like, it's very easy for them to dismiss kids, right? They just don't even think about that. Like, he throws that ball back to that kid and doesn't even have a second thought, even though we then see the kid turn around and pull his little notepad out because, there's a car that just pulled up with an American license plate. I want to write this one down too. If Hyde had been just a little more cognizant of his surroundings, not necessarily just adult things to watch for, that he might have caught that this kid was writing plates down. And it's just something that he missed. They were, however, talking about like when the cop came to the little shop, and that was a concern that they had because that's when Race pulls up in that other car that he had just stolen. And they talk about, like, what if the cop wrote the plates down? It turns out the cop did write the plates down, or at least of the truck and his rolls that had been parked there, which is what gives him away. So it's like they're paying attention to some of these details. But for me, it worked because it was that little sort of thing that was able to kind of slip by without the military might actually noticing it. Even though I knew as soon as I saw that kid, I'm like, oh, they're going to get caught.
That's going to be the end. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Right. But for me, it played.
I deeply wanted the guys to get away with it. And I think that's a signal to how effective the first part of the movie is in portraying them as guys who need a break. And also probably a sign that I'm not the purest flower.
Well, you know, the Ocean's films, I think, are core to your being.
They are core to my being. And so I feel like it was a disappointment because I don't think their undoing at the end was material enough. It seemed like just incidental kind of sideshow comedy to get them all sitting in the sad trombone reveal of the of the truck at the end. And so I felt like if they're going to get caught, let's make it a little bit more of a substantial undoing. That might not be the kind of movie we made, right? The movie is a bit more lighthearted than I probably would have had it. But but the rest of the movie is so strong. Everybody should have died, is what I'm saying, Andy. They should have taken. It should have been a shootout.
To that end, though, I will say I was a little surprised that all of them had been caught with that final reveal. Like, I honestly was like, when the cops call and that phone keeps ringing and you have Bunny who's like, what do you want me to do with the phone? It just is ringing. Like, why aren't you answering your phone? It played really funny, but at the same time, I'm like, well, surely some of the other guys got away because they had left before the phone calls. Yeah, before the phone calls started coming. And so I that was more of the surprise for me. I thought, and if anything, perhaps we could have had some of them get away. It was one of those things where I think that I had read somewhere that it was one of those periods where I don't know if the Brits had something like the Hays Code, but there was something where people were like, well, it was a period in Britain where they couldn't end with them getting all of them getting away.
Yeah, the bad guys had to lose. That's what it would have been here. It makes sense. I was thinking about that, but that's a thing that makes it dated. For me, it feels like it's a bit too tidy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess you can see it that way. For me, I don't know. I think it played okay. I didn't really run into any issues. The book also, there is this very simple error that gives them all away. So yeah, so they get caught in the book as well.
Yeah,
which was 1958, and I don't think a book is going to be required to follow like a production code sort of thing. So I don't think that would have necessarily mattered there.
Played for humor.
Yeah. What
do we know? What do you think about our friend Basil Dearden, who was both in the movie and wrote it and directed it?
I don't think I've ever talked about good old Basil, but I think the only other thing of his that I've seen is the horror anthology film Dead of Night. And I think he directed one of the segments in that, which is a great little anthology series. The one that he directed was The Hearse Driver and also The Overarching Story. Those are the things that he directed with it. So I don't know a whole lot about him, but he is one of those British filmmakers. I think he started in theater, then worked quite a bit at Ealing Studios, directing a lot of the comedies there. So I don't know. Have you seen anything else of his?
I have not. Not even Dead of Night, which I feel like is a hole at this point. So no, he is clearly a blind spot and has a number of credits that are well-regarded credits in terms of his directing catalog. I feel like there's room to explore more of his work through the late 40s through the 60s.
And he wrote too. So I mean, he was definitely somebody working in a variety of different capacities. So
yeah, interesting guy.
Yeah. Although, some critics definitely don't like him. Dave Thompson said, Dearden's films are decent, empty, and plotting, and his association with Michael Relf is a fair representative of the British preference for bureaucratic cinema.
It's so interesting, and looking at his credits, particularly through the late 50s, early 60s, I mean, there are a lot of them that are up over 7 on the IMDb scale, and maybe that's because Basil and his mother are reviewing them. They're not. But it does seem like they have a higher regard than that statement would indicate.
Yeah, yeah. I know he would end up working with Michael Relf quite a bit, the producer. Like they ended up collaborating on quite a number of different films over 20 years. Michael Relf, I think he would produce like Kind Hearts and Coronets. So yeah, definitely working on a lot of those Ealing.
And I have no problem with Kind Hearts and Coronets.
Absolutely none. So, but I think in the scope of how he handles this story, I think it plays effectively. I think we have some, I mean, there's nothing incredibly creative with the direction, but I don't think that this was necessarily the period where you were going to find a lot of that. It just played effectively for what he was doing, like the camera movements, the cutting style during the different heists that we have. I think it all cuts together nicely to build the tension and the energy. And so I felt like, and also like the British humor, I think that Basil had a sense of the comedic beats that would play, and I think that they all play effectively. And Bryan Forbes wrote the screenplay and also is in the film. He is he would go on and work with Attenborough quite a bit. I think adapted this book in a way that, again, while I could have had a little more detail with some of the characters, I think that all together they put something together that effectively worked for me quite well, and I enjoyed.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was fantastic. I had a really, really good time with it. I'm so glad to have it on the list in the catalog. It was a real treat.
As far as our cast, let's kind of walk through some of them. Jack Hawkins is the lead and is the one who set all this up. He is an actor who I think he was dealing with cancer during this filming, and actually production had to slow down a few times because of treatments that he was going through, or it was very difficult on him. He was, he had quite a bit of a rough time. And I think that it would go away, and then it came back like 10 years later. And I think he ended up dying in 1973 from all of this. But what'd you think of him as our lead?
Yeah, no, I love him. I think he I think he ends up bringing both gravitas and a bit of bumbling to the experience, and the fact that he's a half colonel is and not quite a colonel is I thought funny. I don't know if that was unintentionally funny or what, but I thought that was really great. Like, these guys aren't the all the cream of the crop, as we've talked about. I think he's he's a face we've seen a lot, right? We've seen him in a lot of things, not all things that we've talked about but on the show, but Bridge over the River Kwai and Ben-Hur and Zulu, and like he's been in some big movies of the 50s
Lawrence
and
of
60s.
Arabia. Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia, of course. And so he's I think he's a delight to see on screen, and he totally fits the bill of the prime gentleman of the crew.
No, I think that's what works so well with him, is that he feels like a perfectly stuffy British soldier who is kind of like, doesn't like this idea of being called redundant and, wants to do something about it. Like, I just bought into him as this guy who was going to make this decision and just move forward with it whole hog, and is so confident that he thinks, like, it's almost like there's nothing that he sees as a possibility of them getting caught, because they're running it like a military operation, and it's planned down to the wire. Like, every little thing is thought about. And that's why I think it's so interesting that he doesn't even, like, he is convinced somebody just gave them in. Like, he says, "Who squealed?" Like, I just want to know who told you. That reveal that it's actually just this little kid, I think, again, just going to what I was saying earlier, he never would have seen that coming. I thought he played that so well. I really enjoyed that about him.
So his second in command is Nigel Patrick.
Yes.
Who I think also serves as a perfectly cast second in command.
Yeah, I enjoy him. I've seen him in a few movies. He hasn't been in quite as many big films as Jack Hawkins has, but still, he's definitely somebody who's been in plenty of projects that you would have heard of. I enjoy his presence in the film. Like, he plays that second in command well, to the point where when early in the film, after their first meeting, when it turns out that he actually tailed Hyde back to his house, Hyde's just not surprised. He's just, happy to have the conversation with him and invite him in to chat and to have a meal. And then the guy starts cleaning up his place. And he's just like, well, I don't have any, you may as well just move in and just spend the night, like it played in a really funny way. I enjoyed the way that their relationship developed.
So there's an interesting sort of angle between these guys. Some of them, the way they talk to each other, the way their affection is portrayed from these guys. I think had this movie been made maybe after 1980, I would have said there's some homoerotic tension between the crew. I think it's just a cultural affectation of how they relate to each other, that their affections give me a vibe of homoeroticism. Do you agree?
I think that's definitely something that through modern eyes, we might be seeing that a little bit more than is actually intended. I mean, but he does call him old dear, old darling quite a bit. And Hyde is always like, please stop that. But it does make you wonder if there is something more there. And I'm not sure. Maybe it was written to be that way. I think I read something about Basil Dearden, who, along with his producer, they would go on to try breaking some barriers as far as, producing and directing stories that actually dealt with homosexuality and things like that. So it's entirely possible he was threading some things like this into the film intentionally.
It's not like I didn't see it, right? Like I couldn't figure out which line I should fall on. Like, is this a movie that's intentionally trying to demonstrate that these guys are pushing all kinds of boundaries, not just criminal boundaries? Or if I was just reading into that because it seems like if there isn't an angle of some sort of homoeroticism in a modern movie, then the movie has failed somehow these days.
Yeah. Well, I think there comes a point where it starts becoming a little unfair also, though, for every movie that's just a group of men to start also trying to look at it like, well, where's the homoerotic tension? Is it here?
Yes.
Like, do we think about that about Ocean's 11? Like,
not at all.
Is Danny and Brad Pitt's character, is there an actual romantic attraction between those two? Like, it does.
I think a lot of people wish that there was.
Well, no, exactly. And I think that's what happens, with a lot of conversations, especially these days with older films, is that people always want to now start looking for that angle to be there. And maybe it is, maybe it's not, but I don't think that it always has to be there. You know what I mean?
Yes, I totally do. And in some cases it's there because the filmmakers are subversively trying to demonstrate a cultural norm that we need to move beyond. I don't think this was that movie. I don't think so. I would love to be proven wrong, because there's something about this movie having, being just a parade of cultural norms being beaten down in 1950s, 60s Britain that I think is fantastic.
Well, we also do have the two actors, because initially they rent a room at the local theater to have one of their meetings. And two of the theater boys, one of which I thought it was a fun little early small part for Oliver Reed as like a clearly homosexual chorus boy, where they pop in and they're looking for their place to perform. And that was one of those moments where I was like, are we playing this like, because if anything, Hyde seems a little more dismissive of any homosexuals, and perhaps that's why he reacts to race the way he does about, please stop calling me darling all the time. Like, who knows? But it is interesting that, if anything, at least we're getting some sense of that read.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
The last of all the other guys, like the two other guys that I think stand out for me, was it Rich? Who was the priest?
Roger Livesey. Yeah.
I thought he was fantastic, and maybe I was trying to make the case, was he underused? I don't think he was, because he was such a wonderful little comic foil. Just his behavior, that he was constantly, they constantly called him Padre, but he, was obviously not a Padre and had a huge collection of porn. Like all of that stuff, I thought was just pitch perfect for that character. And I didn't need more of him.
No, well, yeah, but again, it's always a tricky because I don't know. For me, I would have liked a little more of everybody. And he was one that I found to be an interesting character. And I felt like after we had a fascinating setup for him, being a priest, having a suitcase full of porn. And then we get a brilliant scene I loved, and we haven't really talked about it, but when they do the break-in at the army compound and they said, let's all speak Irish with an Irish accent so that they think it's IRA. I was like, okay, that actually was really fun.
That's perfect.
To see. But watching him take on the role of the general as they're doing this fake tour of the mess hall because of complaints of food, and the way that he so excitedly jumped into his role and was tasking all of the other people, including Hyde, with try that egg, eat it.
Yeah.
Right. The way that he was doing all of that, it was perfect. And so I wanted more of that because they gave him something really interesting to do. And I was just like, okay, I really want to see. And I think if you were going to rework this story nowadays, you'd find some different character arcs that you could work with each of these characters. And he was one where I felt like there's an interesting opportunity for a little more character arc with him, but because I just loved what he was doing with the role.
Yeah, I can see your point. And I felt like he was placed in the movie in a really natural way. And I thought that worked. It wasn't like overwrought comedy. It was really just really thoughtful character acting. And I think he's really great. The other one is Attenborough. Andy, anytime we watch young Attenborough movies, I am here for it. He's such an interesting actor because, it's not like one of the other, another actor that we've been watching for decades and decades, that we've sort of been able to see their movies as they age. For me, Attenborough, I feel like I met in Jurassic Park. I wasn't paying attention
right.
to Attenborough until he was old. And so to go back and see all these movies where he was just a young, dashing kind of Lothario is really exciting. He's just great.
Oh, he's so much fun here as this guy who's fixing slot machines. And I mean, he's hitting on that woman with the guy who just came to drop off the slot machine. While the guy is still there, he's already asking her for her number and everything. He's ready to move in. Is let me know when you're done with her so I can have her. Yeah. He is so terrible, but it played so well to the point where when he does show up later with a woman, it's that woman. He had gotten that woman from the other guy, and they were planning on running off together.
I don't know. I mean, we keep calling it the other guy. I swear, I think it's his dad, and I think the movie's better for it.
Well, that certainly puts definitely a twist on that relationship with that woman. When my dad's done with you.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. No, I always love seeing him in projects. He's so much fun, and it's fun to see him here. And, again, that whole idea of Hyde's rules that he sets up, if you break any of these rules, then you're going to get fined. It was kind of silly in some capacity, but it worked. And I enjoyed the way that all of that played because it just allowed for just a kind of a fun sense of him in the story. So yeah, I always enjoy seeing him, especially as, like you said, going back and watching these older films that he's a part of. It's just fun to see what he was doing when he was so young, before he was in Jurassic Park, before he was directing Gandhi or Chaplin or things like that, back when he was a young Brit, just doing all sorts of interesting projects. So fun to see him. And I find myself exhilarated to see if I'm going to be able to recognize him because he's so young, right? Without the beard. And it turns out his eyes are uncanny. He's still a giveaway. Yeah, it's easy to tell. It's easy to tell. Yeah. I think the earliest thing that we've talked about up until this point is The Great Escape, which was just a couple years later. So, yep. Yeah. The rest of the guys, I mean, Bryan Forbes does play Porthill, Captain Porthill, and he is the screenwriter, and then he would go on to work with Attenborough on quite a number of projects when they formed Beaver Films, which I think their first film was this same year, The Angry Silence. So, yeah. So again, it's just, his role wasn't as exciting in the film, but it's just important to note that that's kind of one of the collaborations there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, Kieran Moore, Terrence Alexander, and Norman Bird were the other three. So
the soldiers.
Yeah,
it's good to have soldiers.
Yeah, I know. It was a really fun film. I enjoyed the way that the score would play, like it would kind of take on a little march themes throughout to kind of give us that sense of energy and everything. Like you said, cinematography wise, the black and white really played well with the gas masks and the smoke later in the movie. And I really thought everything with Bunny was hilarious when Bunny showed up. I mean, Robert Coote, if there's another actor to call out, is just him, because he is one of those British faces who's just such a perfect Brit. And watching him just pounding those drinks back as they were just kind of trying to get him drunk so that he wouldn't remember anything. It just, like, that whole twist of having a neighbor show up at the end was perfect. And I enjoyed him quite a bit.
I did too. It was such vaudeville, keeping his glass full. And then he was just perfectly drunk at the end as they drug him out and put him in the truck. Like, that was a good bit. That was good bit.
It was great. Yeah, it played really well. Had a good time. All right. Well, I guess if we don't have anything else, we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by T. Bless and the Professionals, The Magnetic Buzz, Young Rich Pixies, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
Picture this, old chap. You're the mastermind behind the most exquisite cinematic heist. Your target? Letterboxd, the ultimate destination for film aficionados worldwide. But to pull off this job with the utmost finesse, you'll need a certain je ne sais quoi. You need to go pro, my good man. Imagine unlocking a world of possibilities, free from the dreadful distractions of third-party advertisements. With Letterboxd Pro, you gain the power to analyze your viewing habits with unparalleled sophistication. Personalized annual and all-time stats pages become your blueprint, revealing patterns and preferences that will elevate your film game to the highest echelons. But here's the real pièce de résistance. You can now select and filter by your favorite streaming services, handpicked from the extensive lineup on Just Watch. Receive notifications the moment a film on your watch list graces one of your chosen platforms. It's like having a trusted confidant discreetly informing you of the perfect opportunity to strike. And that's not all, dear friend. With Pro, you'll have the privilege of seeing your friends' average ratings, tracking the films in your personal collection, filtering your activity feed, pinning content to your profile, duplicating lists, and managing tags with the finesse of a true mastermind. But perhaps you're in pursuit of something even grander, something that positively screams cinematic legend. That's where Letterboxd Patron comes in, old sport. With all the perks of Pro and then some, you'll be able to customize your experience down to the last detail. Handpick your preferred poster and backdrop for any film, and curate your own profile, reviews, and lists to absolute perfection. Even select your favorite image for any cast or crew member. As a patron, your name will be immortalized on the Letterboxd Patrons page, a testament to your unwavering dedication to the art of film. And as an added bonus, you'll gain early access to exclusive beta features, putting you leagues ahead of the competition. Now here's the best part, my dear fellow. As a loyal listener of our podcast, you're entitled to an exclusive 20% discount on both Pro and Patron memberships, and it even works for renewals. All you have to do is visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd to claim your discount. It's our way of saying cheers for being a part of the crew. So what do you say, old bean? Are you ready to join the ranks of the elite and pull off the cinematic heist of the century? Head over to thenextreel.com/letterboxd and upgrade to a Letterboxd Pro or Patron today. Show the world what you're really made of, because, as a wise man once said, you're either in or you're out right now.
All right, Andy, sequels and remakes. We don't have any more.
We don't have any more, except we do have more of the books. So if you want to actually go grab the John Boland 1958 League of Gentlemen, you can then read the sequels that he wrote, The Gentleman Reform and The Gentleman at Large, that were published. Now, there was a TV show, The League of Gentlemen, but that is completely unrelated. I thought perhaps it was in some capacity or even the title, but everything I could find pointed to the fact that it just used the name.
I think, Andy, mark my words, mark them here. I think somebody's going to adapt this. This just seems ripe for a Netflix series.
I think it would be a lot of fun. I mean, and I'd be curious to check the books out to see, especially knowing that there are 2 sequels, like, is there a fuller, richer story that you could tell to kind of give a full picture of these 3 characters, or all these different characters? All
right, how did it do at award season? Do we have anything?
Not a whole lot. At the BAFTAs, it did get nominated for Best British Screenplay, but lost to The Angry Silence. That was the other film that I was talking about from Attenborough and Forbes. And at the San Sebastian International Film Festival, it did win the Zulueta Prize for Best Actor, which actually went to 5 of the actors: Attenborough, Hawkins, Forbes, Livesey, and Patrick. They all, as a group, received the award. Again, leaving out the weird 3 soldiers.
Yeah, Richards. They don't get it. Okay, box office. Clearly, this is the high point of box office data. I'm sure you have a lot.
For heist films, you think that numbers would be something that they would be thinking about. But no, this is yet another tricky one. I did find that Dearden had either, very specifically, £179,602 or £192,000 to make this. For our purposes, I'm just going with the higher number, which converts to $539,520 US dollars in 1960 and just under 5.8 million in today's dollars. The movie premiered in the UK April 5th, 1960, then finally hit screens in the US January 24th, 1961, opposite His and Hers, La Notte, and 101 Dalmatians. There's unfortunately no clear information about how much it earned at the box office, though I did find that it was the 6th most popular film at the UK box office in 1960. I also found out that by 1971, it had earned a profit of £250,000 or $610,000, and apparently over 20 years later, Bryan Forbes said that it had earned profit somewhere between £300 and £400, so it was profitable. Unfortunately, I just don't have any specifics, so we'll just have to go with what we have.
Imagine if they had been measuring their results in terms of APFM in 1960, Andy. What a treasure trove of data we'd have today.
I think I need to just talk to the Hollywood elites and just make the switch.
And British elites. Like, we need to plan a marketing tour.
Maybe I start in Bollywood and
yeah, right.
work my way over.
That'd probably do all right. Yeah. In Bollywood. I think that figure alone would be inspirational for a lot of Bollywood filmmakers. Well, I'm thrilled we talked about it. I'm glad it's on the list. Great film. A great way to revisit our heist series.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to see a film like this and how it played out. Especially, 1960, this is just early on in these heist stories. As we mentioned earlier, this is the same year Ocean's 11 comes out, the American film, but I just don't feel like, especially kind of like the fun sort of action comedy heist film, I don't feel like was a thing so much yet. And so it was fun to see. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings, but first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, Vittorio De Sica's After the Fox.
Grab your girl. Guard your gold. Hold your jewels. The fox is loose. I will be out of here by 3 o'clock tomorrow. This I promise you. Start the car! Start the car!
Who is the fox?
I am the fox.
Who are you?
I am me.
Who is me?
Me is a thief.
It's Benucci. There has been a change in the plans. The fox is out of the tree. We are taking the gold of Cairo job.
Are you bringing more murder?
Speak to me. Say something. Mama, please.
Are you making more sister?
There has been enough crying. Take this soap and wash those lips off your face.
Oh, I hate you. I hate you till I die.
So after the fox, off to the hunt with chains and locks. So after the fox, someone is always chasing after the fox.
The fox will not fail.
Why do you steal?
So I be rich.
My confederates and I, we have in our possession over 300 bars of gold bullion.
Where is the gold now?
Why not work?
Work is hard.
To be caught.
I never fail.
I've got a plan! I've got a plan!
All little ducks wind up.
Not me, not me.
Aldo Vannucci of Italy, a clever, resourceful criminal, and sometimes called the Fox.
After the fox, off to the hunt with chains and locks.
They're unloading the cargo.
What kind of cargo?
It's very big, and it's shaped in bars, and it's the color of gold.
What do you think it is?
Big bars of gold.
So after the fox, someone is always chasing after the fox. Someone is always chasing after the fox.
You caught Peter Sellers and Pussycat. Now chase him as the Fox.
All right, so here's the score. You've seen The Target, premium podcasting. You've scoped out the goods, insightful film analysis. But you want more. You want the inside track, the velvet rope experience, the uncut gems. That's where we come in. This is the crew you need for the ultimate heist of cinematic glory. First, we bypass the main feed, early access. You're in, days before the general public, enjoying the spoils while everyone else waits in line. Think of it as slipping through the loading dock while the guards are distracted by the main entrance. Then, the bonus content, hidden within each episode, like a diamond necklace tucked inside a velvet painting. Extra scenes, director's commentary, deleted analysis. The good stuff. Most people won't even know it's there, but you will. Periodic bonus episodes, completely separate operations, targeting different cinematic vaults. Surprise drops, unexpected treasures. Consider it the getaway car, waiting just around the corner. Your own personal podcast feed, a custom-built channel delivering everything directly to you. No distractions, no interruptions, pure, unadulterated cinematic gold. Ad-free episodes, we disable the alarms, neutralize the commercial breaks. A clean, uninterrupted listening experience. No static, no interference, just you and movie podcast magic. Members get live-streamed recording sessions. That's right, witness the heist in action. See how the magic is made live and direct. Ask questions, offer suggestions, become a part of the creative process. Exclusive Discord channels? That's the inner sanctum. Connect with fellow cinephiles, share your theories, debate the finer points of film history. This is where the real conversations happen. And the best part? You're not just grabbing the loot. You're directly supporting the podcasts you love. Investing in the future of film analysis, becoming a patron of the cinematic arts. So are you in? Join the crew. Become a member today by visiting truestory.fm/join. The heist awaits. Letterboxd, Andy. You know Letterboxd. You've been talking about it for an hour. Letterboxd.com/the next reel. That's where you can find our HQ account over on Letterboxd. What are you going to do? What are you going to do for this movie? You going to call it like you saw it? 5 stars? Heart?
I don't think I'm going to end up going quite that high with it. I mean, I definitely had fun with it. I had a good time. I think it's an easy 3.5, and I think that's where I'm going to sit with it.
I think 3.5 is exactly a half too low, Andy. I'm giving it 4 stars. Does it succeed? Does it succeed at what it's actually trying to do? I think so. And that extra half star, we'll just call it's for gas masks and smoke.
That
was enough smokes to elect like 1,500 popes. Am I right?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. That was a lot.
There are
of
so
smoke.
many popes. So much smoke.
All the new popes that England just elected. That will average out to 3 3/4 and a heart. So we'll round that up to 4 stars and a heart over at our account on Letterboxd, which is at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about The League of Gentlemen? We would love to know. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Okay. I think we both went straight to the bottom of the barrel. You gave up at the bottom end.
I did give up at the bottom end.
You couldn't do it. You just couldn't truck with the low stars.
Yeah.
You want to share where you ended up?
I went with a 5-star and a heart by Chris, who starts with a quote, "All right, Colonel, if that's the way you want it. My effing God, these bitches gay. Good for them. Good for them." Again, going to our point.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Was that it? That was the end?
That was the whole review, yeah.
Okay. I've got a 1.5 from Cole Wagner, who says, somehow managed to make this super compelling premise painfully boring. I do not need to see a shot of dapper bank robbers peeling effing potatoes in a montage before the final heist. Proud of myself for finishing this thing, which takes its first 30 minutes setting up a huge amount of uninteresting characters, then spends the rest of the runtime continuing to give you next to nothing to latch onto. In all seriousness, I know potatoes are a joke, and it really is heartwarming to see these chaps bro out and have their lives rejuvenated. And there are some good moments of heist tension, but damn, the bad outweighs the good in this one. And I wish I could say I cared about any single character. Potatoes. There were a lot of potatoes. Anyway.
Somebody's got to peel the potatoes.
Somebody's got to peel.
In a story about the military, you always end up, you got to, that's what they do.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Letterboxd. Are you tired of endlessly scrolling through streaming services?
Ugh, it is such a time waster.
Well, have you ever heard of Letterboxd?
No, what's that?
It's a platform where you can track and rate films, create watch lists. It's the perfect social network for movie lovers.
That sounds amazing. It's like Film Facebook.
Well, that last thing sounds dumb, but if you like the idea, say goodbye to bad movies and hello to your quintessential watch list.
Are you thesaurusing right now?
Just use the discount code NEXTREEL or visit thenextreel.com/letterbox to get 20% off your pro or patron membership. And that works for renewals as well.
Awesome. I am definitely signing up for a patron membership today.
Great. Start curating your movie collection with Letterboxd.